The great hall was silent. Commander Zeth-Galar stood in the center of the room, his forearms hanging at his sides. His gray skin bore deep scars from many battles. The alien commander looked old and tired as he faced the council. 12 different species sat around the curved table. Their eyes watched him carefully. Some had fur, others had scales. A few glowed with soft light. All of them wanted to hear his story about the humans. "I have fought in wars for 40 years, Zeth-Galar began. His voice was deep and rough. "I have seen the rise and fall of many species, but nothing prepared me for what I witnessed when humanity entered our war." The Kepler Station Council Chamber held representatives from across the galaxy. Each species had their own way of fighting. The Vorthons used living ships that could heal themselves. The Crystalline Empire fought with pure energy beams. The Hive Collective moved as one mind controlling millions of bodies. Then came the humans. 3 years ago, we first met them, Zeth-Galar continued. Earth was a small world on the edge of known space. Their technology was simple. No energy shields, no plasma weapons. Their ships were made of metal and used chemical rockets. A council member with blue tentacles shifted in his seat. Why did we include them in the war effort? We needed numbers, Zeth-Galar replied. The Zerion swarm was destroying everything in its path. We thought humans could carry supplies or guard empty space stations. We never expected them to fight. The commander's mind went back to that first meeting. Captain Jake Morrison had walked onto Zeth-Galar's flagship wearing a simple blue uniform. No armor, no ceremonial weapons, just a human male with brown hair and calm eyes. "Your orders are to hold Proxima Ridge," Zeth-Galar had told Morrison. "The Zerion will send 10,000 warriors. You have 500 soldiers and 1 ship." Most species would have asked for more troops or better weapons. Morrison just nodded. "How long do you need us to hold?" Morrison had asked. 6 hours would be enough. 12 hours would be a miracle. Morrison smiled. "We'll give you 24. Zeth-Galar thought the human was joking or stupid. No one could hold against those odds. The Zerion swarm was the most feared enemy in the galaxy. Their warriors stood 8 feet tall with razor-sharp claws and thick armor plates. They moved fast and hit hard. They never retreated. The battle began at dawn, Zeth-Galar told the council. I watched from my command ship. The Zerion forces came like a black wave across the rocky ground of Proxima Ridge. The human ship, Liberty's Edge, was ugly compared to alien vessels. It had sharp angles and thick metal plating. Gray smoke came from its engines. It looked like something built in a hurry with spare parts. But when the fighting started, everything changed. The humans did not use energy weapons, Zeth-Galar explained. They fired metal bullets from tubes, simple projectile weapons that we thought were outdated, but the Zerion energy shields could not stop them. The council members looked confused. Their species had long ago moved past kinetic weapons. Why use bullets when you could use laser beams or plasma bolts? The Zerion warriors charged up the ridge, Zeth-Galar continued. They expected the humans to fire energy weapons. Their shields were ready, but the metal bullets went right through the shields and hit their armor. The sound of human weapons was different too. Instead of the clean hum of energy beams, human guns made loud banging noises. Bang, bang, bang. The sound echoed across the battlefield like thunder. Captain Morrison's soldiers spread out among the rocks. They did not stand in neat lines like other species. They hid behind stones and in small holes they dug in the ground. When Zerion warriors came close, the humans would pop up, fire, and disappear again. It was chaos, Zeth-Galar admitted. No formation, no organization, just humans appearing and vanishing like ghosts. But it worked. The first wave of Zerion warriors fell back. They had never faced an enemy that fought this way. Their shields were useless. Their tactics did not work against enemies who refused to fight fairly. The second wave was larger, Zeth-Galar said. 2,000 Zerion warriors with heavy weapons. I was sure the humans would retreat. Instead, Morrison's voice came over the radio. All units, hold your ground. Make every shot count. The humans began using weapons that other species considered too dangerous. They threw small bombs that exploded when Xerion warriors stepped on them. They fired rockets that created huge explosions. Some humans carried flamethrowers that shot burning liquid. They fought like they were angry. Zethkalar told the council, other species fight to win. Humans fought like they wanted to hurt their enemies. The strangest thing was how humans reacted to being wounded. When a Vorthon soldier was injured, he would retreat for medical help. When a human soldier was shot, he would get angry and fight harder. Zethkalar watched a human female soldier take a Xerion claw to her shoulder. The wound was deep and bleeding. Instead of falling back, she grabbed the Xerion warrior and pulled the pin from a grenade. Both the human and the alien died in the explosion. They did not fear death, Zethkalar said quietly. They feared failure more than dying. Hour after hour, the battle continued. The humans held their ground. When they ran out of bullets, they used Xerion weapons. When those broke, they used knives and rocks. Some fought with their bare hands. Captain Morrison was everywhere. He would appear where the fighting was worst, rally his troops, then disappear to help somewhere else. His uniform was torn and bloody, but he never stopped moving. After 18 hours, something strange happened, Zethkalar told the council. The Xerion began to retreat. This had never happened before. The Xerion swarm never retreated. They fought until they won or until they all died. But facing the humans was different. The Xerion warriors started to look over their shoulders. They moved slower. Some even ran away. The humans held Proxima Ridge for 26 hours, Zethkalar finished. When relief forces arrived, Captain Morrison was still standing, wounded, exhausted, but alive. He had kept his promise. The council chamber was quiet. No one spoke for a long moment. That was just the beginning, Zethkalar said. What I saw at Proxima Ridge was nothing compared to what came later. The humans changed everything about how we fight wars. They made us all question what we thought we knew about battle. The alien commander looked around the room at the faces of the council members. Some looked worried. Others seemed curious. All of them wanted to hear more. Should I continue? Zethkalar asked. The council leader, a tall being made of living crystal, nodded slowly. Tell us everything, Commander. We need to understand what humanity brought to our galaxy. Zethkalar took a deep breath. The hardest parts of his story were yet to come. Zethkalar walked slowly around the center of the council chamber. His forearms moved as he spoke, showing the size and shape of the battles he remembered. The council members leaned forward to listen. After Proxima Ridge, we gave humans bigger jobs, the commander said. Colonel Lisa Harper was put in charge of ground forces at Titan Base. This was a key position that protected 3 star systems. Titan Base sat on a dead moon covered in gray dust. The base had thick walls and powerful guns. It was supposed to be safe, but the Xerion found a way to dig tunnels underneath it. Colonel Harper was different from Captain Morrison, Zethkalar explained. Morrison was brave and quick to act. Harper was cold and calculating. She studied every battle the Xerion had ever fought. The alien commander remembered meeting Harper for the first time. She was a tall woman with short black hair and sharp green eyes. When Zethkalar explained the base defenses, Harper just nodded and asked strange questions. How deep can the Xerion dig? She had asked. Why does that matter? Our sensors will detect any tunnels. What if they dig deeper than our sensors can reach? Zethkalar had thought this was impossible. The rock under Titan Base was too hard to dig through quickly. But Harper spent her first week studying soil samples and rock layers. She was preparing for something, Zethkalar told the council. But none of us understood what. When the Xerion attack began, it came from 3 directions at once. Ships attacked from space. Ground forces charged across the dusty surface. And yes, tunnel teams came from below, just as Harper had predicted. The tunnels were deep, Zethkalar continued. Deeper than anyone thought possible. The Xerion had been digging for months. They came up inside our base. Most commanders would have ordered a retreat to regroup. The Galactic way of war was organized and careful. When a position was lost, you fell back to the next defensive line. Harper did something else. She ordered her troops to collapse the tunnels, Zethkalar said, with both armies inside them. The council members looked shocked. Several made sounds of disbelief. Collapsing tunnels would trap their own soldiers underground with the enemy. That is against all rules of warfare, said the blue-tentacled representative. You do not sacrifice your own troops. Humans do not follow our rules, Zethkalar replied. Harper calculated that trapped Zerion could not call for help or receive new orders. She turned their advantage into a trap. The underground fighting was terrible. In the dark tunnels, high-tech weapons were useless. Both sides fought with knives, clubs, and bare hands. The air was thick with dust and smoke. Sergeant Ben Rodriguez was in the deepest tunnel when the collapse happened. A Zerion warrior had torn off his left arm with its claws. Most soldiers would have passed out from pain and blood loss. Rodriguez wrapped his torn uniform around the wound to stop the bleeding. Then he used his remaining hand to arm explosive charges. When a group of Zerion tried to dig their way out, Rodriguez detonated the bombs. The explosion killed him and 15 Zerion warriors. He could have tried to escape, Zethkalar said. Instead, he chose to complete his mission. Above ground, Harper's troops fought in ways that made no sense to alien observers. They did not try to protect their weapons or equipment. When ammunition ran low, humans would pick up Zerion weapons and use them against their former owners. Lieutenant Amy Foster was hit in the head by Zerion claw that cracked her skull. She should have died immediately. Instead, she kept fighting for 3 more days. Blood ran down her face, but she continued to give orders and fire her weapon. How is this possible? Asked a council member with golden fur. Human brains are different, Zethkalar explained. They can function even when damaged. Fear and pain make them fight harder, not weaker. The strangest part was how humans acted when they were losing. Other species became careful when casualties mounted. They would retreat to save their remaining troops. Humans did the opposite. As their numbers got smaller, they became more dangerous. Captain Danny Walsh started the battle with 200 soldiers. By the 3rd day, he had only 12 left. Any reasonable commander would have surrendered or retreated. Walsh gathered his remaining troops in the base's main hall. Zerion warriors surrounded the building. There were 3,000 of them outside and only 12 humans inside. We can't win, one of his soldiers said. We don't have to win, Walsh replied. We just have to make sure they lose more than we do. What happened next became legend among human forces. Walsh's 12 soldiers held that hall for 18 hours. They used broken furniture as weapons. They made traps from spare parts. They fought with kitchen knives when their guns ran out of bullets. The humans moved the bodies of dead Zerion to build walls. They used Zerion blood to make the floor slippery. When Zerion warriors charged, they would slip and fall. Then the humans would attack them while they were down. It was not warfare, Zethkalar told the council. It was something else, something primitive and terrible. But it worked. By the time help arrived, Walsh and 5 of his soldiers were still alive. Around them lay the bodies of over 800 Zerion warriors. The remaining Zerion forces had stopped attacking. They were afraid to enter the hall. The Zerion called it the cursed place, Zethkalar said. They believed evil spirits lived there. They did not understand that they had simply met humans who refused to give up. After Titan Base, other alien commanders began asking for human advisors. They wanted to learn these new tactics, but humans could not explain what they did. Fighting is just fighting, Harper had told Zethkalar. You do whatever works. But you break all the rules, he had replied. Rules are for people who can afford to lose. The alien commander had not understood this at first. His species fought with honor and followed ancient traditions. War was terrible, but it was also organized and predictable. Humans made war unpredictable. They would attack when they should defend. They would retreat when they should advance. They used weapons in ways that made no sense. They turned their weaknesses into strengths. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to enjoy the challenge. After each battle, human soldiers would gather and talk, Zethkalar told the council. They would joke and laugh about the fighting. They called it fun. Other species fought because they had to. Humans fought like they wanted to. This made them very dangerous, Zethkalar continued. An enemy who enjoys fighting will never stop looking for new ways to win. The council chamber was quiet again. Several members were taking notes. Others just stared at the alien commander with worried expressions. You said this was just the beginning, the crystal leader reminded him. What came next? Zethkalar's scarred face showed something like fear. Next came the space battles. That is when we learned that humans could be even more creative when they had entire fleets to work with. He paused and looked around the room. That is when Admiral Grace Kelly showed us what humans call thinking outside the box. The council members waited. They could tell that the worst parts of the story were coming, but they needed to hear everything. They needed to understand what humanity had brought to their galaxy, and what it might mean for their future. The council chamber grew colder as Zethkalar continued his story. He moved his forearms in wide gestures, showing the paths of ships and the chaos of space battles. His voice became quieter, like he was sharing a terrible secret. Admiral Grace Kelly commanded humanity's first big fleet. He began. She was young for such an important job, maybe 40 years old in human terms. She had red hair and a quick smile that fooled many people. Zethkalar remembered their first meeting on the command station above Broken Worlds. Kelly had arrived wearing a simple gray uniform with no decorations. Most alien admirals wore bright colors and carried ceremonial weapons. Kelly carried only a small computer pad and a cup of black coffee. She spent her first week studying every space battle in galactic history, the commander explained. She watched recordings of fights that happened before humans even knew about space travel. She took notes on everything. The other admirals thought Kelly was trying to learn proper tactics. They offered to teach her the standard formations and attack patterns. Every species had used the same basic strategies for thousands of years. Kelly listened politely to their lessons. Then she did something no one expected. She threw out every rule of space warfare. The Battle of Broken Worlds began like any other, Zethkalar told the council. Two fleets facing each other across empty space. The Zerion had 300 ships. We had 400. The numbers looked good for us. Standard galactic tactics were simple and effective. The bigger ships formed a line. Smaller ships protected them. Everyone fired their best weapons at the enemy line. The side with more ships or better weapons usually won. Kelly's human fleet scattered in all directions. It made no sense, Zethkalar said. Her ships flew to different planets, different moons, even into asteroid fields. She broke up her fleet when she should have kept it together. The alien admirals tried to contact Kelly on the radio. They wanted to ask what she was doing. Kelly's reply was short. Trust me. The Zerion fleet moved forward in perfect formation. Their black ships looked like a wall of death moving through space. They expected the human ships to come back and fight properly. Instead, Kelly's ships started doing impossible things. The human cruiser Defiant Star flew straight toward the gas giant in the Broken World system. It dove into the planet's atmosphere and used the gravity to slingshot around to the other side. When it came out, it was moving 3 times faster than any ship should be able to go. Kelly was using the planets as weapons, Zethkalar explained to the shocked council. She turned the entire star system into a battlefield. Other human ships followed similar paths. They bounced between moons, rode gravitational waves, and used dead asteroids as cover. When they attacked, they came from directions the Zerion never expected. The worst part was what Kelly did with her flagship. The human command ship Liberty Bell was big but not heavily armed. Most admirals used their flagships to give orders from a safe distance. Kelly flew her ship straight into the middle of the Zerion formation. She was going to ram them, Zethkalar said, a direct collision at full speed. The Zerion flagship tried to move out of the way, but Kelly had calculated the exact angle and timing. The Liberty Bell's reinforced front section punched through the Zerion ship's energy shields like they were not there. The collision destroyed both ships. But Kelly had planned for this. As her ship broke apart, escape pods launched in all directions. Each pod carried human soldiers and enough explosives to damage more Zerion ships. She used her own flagship as a giant bomb, Zethkalar told the stunned council, and she scattered her crew across the enemy fleet to cause more damage. The battle became chaos. Human ships appeared and disappeared like ghosts. They attacked, vanished into asteroid fields, then appeared somewhere else. The Zerion fleet could not predict where the next attack would come from. Commander Frank Miller led a squadron of 12 human fighters in the final phase. His ships were small and fast, but carried huge nuclear warheads. In any normal battle, small fighters would attack the enemy's small ships. Miller's fighters ignored the Zerion fighters completely. They dove straight toward the biggest Zerion ships. It was a suicide mission, Zeth Kalar said, but Miller's pilots volunteered for it. They wanted to do it. The human fighters moved in a pattern that made no sense. They spun and rolled like they were dancing instead of fighting. The Zerion gunners could not hit them. When the fighters reached the big ships, each pilot guided his ship into the target by hand. 12 nuclear explosions lit up space like tiny suns. When the light faded, the 6 largest Zerion ships were gone. Miller's squadron destroyed more enemy ships in 5 minutes than most fleets destroy in hours. Zeth Kalar continued, and they did it by throwing their lives away. But the humans had another surprise. While everyone watched the big explosions, other human ships had been busy. They used computer viruses to attack Zerion communications. They fired jamming signals that confused Zerion sensors. They even broadcast fake orders to Zerion ships. Private Kate Johnson was on one of the boarding teams that captured a damaged Zerion cruiser. She had never seen alien technology before, but within minutes she figured out how to use Zerion energy weapons against their former owners. She learned to use enemy weapons faster than we could learn to use our own, Zeth Kalar said with amazement in his voice. The strangest part was how humans combined different types of fighting. Other species specialized in one kind of warfare: energy weapons or kinetic weapons, space battles or ground battles, electronic warfare or physical combat. Humans used everything at once. They fired bullets and lasers from the same ship. They used computer viruses while dropping soldiers on enemy ships. They attacked with nuclear bombs and kitchen knives in the same battle. It was like fighting 12 different armies at the same time, Zeth Kalar explained. Just when we thought we understood their tactics, they would do something completely different. The Battle of Broken Worlds ended when the surviving Zerion ships retreated. This had never happened before. The Zerion swarm had never lost a major space battle. Admiral Kelly's victory celebration was quiet. She did not boast or make speeches. She just drank her coffee and planned the next battle. The other admirals wanted to study her tactics, Zeth Kalar told the council. They asked her to write reports explaining what she had done. Kelly's report was 1 page long. It said, "Be unpredictable, use everything, win." The galactic military spent months trying to understand what this meant. They created training programs and tactical manuals. They built computer models to predict human behavior. Nothing worked. Humans could not be predicted because they did not follow patterns. That is when we realized the truth, Zeth Kalar said quietly. We were not just fighting alongside a new ally. We were watching the birth of a completely new kind of warfare. The council members looked at each other with worried expressions. Some were taking rapid notes. Others sat in shocked silence. But this was still not the worst part, Zeth Kalar continued. What came next was harder to understand and more frightening than anything we had seen. He paused and looked around the room. His scarred face showed deep concern. Next, I will tell you about humanity's greatest weapon. It was not their technology or their tactics. It was something that could not be seen or measured. The council waited. They could sense that the most disturbing part of the story was coming. I will tell you about what humans call psychological warfare, Zeth Kalar said. About how they learned to break their enemies' minds before breaking their bodies. Zeth Kalar stopped walking and stood very still in the center of the council chamber. His 4 arms hung at his sides like he was carrying a heavy weight. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. What I am about to tell you may sound impossible, he began, but I saw it with my own eyes. Humans discovered something that no other species had ever learned. They found out how to make their enemies afraid to fight. The council members leaned forward. Fear was not something most galactic species understood in warfare. You fought until you won or lost, Emotions were irrelevant. Colonel Steve Morris was put in charge of special operations on Hellworld Prime, Zethkalar continued. This planet was covered in poisonous swamps and burning volcanoes. The Zerion had built a fortress there that was supposed to be impossible to capture. Morris was a thin man with gray hair and calm blue eyes. He looked more like a teacher than a soldier. But when he studied the Zerion fortress, he did not focus on its walls or weapons. He studied the minds of the creatures inside. Morris spent weeks learning about Zerion psychology, Zethkalar explained. He wanted to understand what made them afraid. Most species would have attacked the fortress with bombs or energy weapons. Morris did something different. He sent small teams of soldiers into the swamps around the fortress. But these soldiers did not attack anything. They just left evidence that they had been there. Empty bullet casings scattered near Zerion patrol routes, Zethkalar said. Human footprints in the mud. Pieces of human equipment where Zerion guards would find them. The strangest thing was the sounds. Morris's teams left small devices that played recordings of human voices, not battle cries or threats, just normal conversation and laughter. The Zerion began to hear human laughter in the dark swamps, Zethkalar told the council. They would search for the source but find nothing, just the sound of humans enjoying themselves in the middle of a war zone. This should not have been frightening. Laughter was just a sound. But something about it made the Zerion warriors nervous. They started jumping at shadows. They fired their weapons at sounds that turned out to be nothing. Morris understood something we did not, Zethkalar continued. Fear spreads faster than any weapon. A frightened enemy makes mistakes. Lieutenant Helen Price took the psychological operations even further. She was a young woman with short blonde hair who studied alien languages in her spare time. Price discovered that she could copy Zerion communication signals. During battles, Price would broadcast fake messages on Zerion radio frequencies. She sent false retreat orders to Zerion units. She gave contradictory commands that confused their chain of command. She made Zerion commanders think their own allies were betraying them. But Price's most effective weapon was music. Human music was like torture to Zerion ears, Zethkalar explained. Especially the type they called heavy metal. The loud guitars and pounding drums caused physical pain to Zerion hearing organs. Price began broadcasting this music before human attacks. The sounds of screaming guitars and thundering drums would echo across battlefields. Zerion warriors would cover their ears and stumble around in confusion. Human soldiers earned the nickname Screamers because of the terrible sounds that came before their attacks. But the music served another purpose. It made humans fight harder. Music affected humans differently, Zethkalar said. It made them excited and energetic. They would sing along while fighting. They seemed to enjoy the noise that tortured their enemies. The most disturbing discovery was how humans used their own emotions as weapons. Other species tried to control their feelings during battle. Logic and calm thinking were considered important for good tactics. Humans did the opposite. They encouraged strong emotions and used them to fight better. When news reached human forces that the Zerion had destroyed the colony on New California, killing thousands of human civilians, something changed in the human soldiers. Their next attack was so violent that surviving Zerion warriors spoke of fighting demon soldiers. Captain Paul Turner led that attack. He was normally a quiet, polite man who followed all the rules of war. But after New California, Turner's troops fought with such fury that even their alien allies were frightened. They moved differently, Zethkalar remembered. Faster and more aggressively. They made sounds like angry animals. Some fought with their bare hands even when they had weapons. The Zerion warriors, who had never shown fear before, began to retreat from Turner's forces. They called the humans fire spirits and believed they were fighting supernatural beings. But Turner's most dangerous skill was not fighting. It was talking. Turner could make Zerion prisoners tell him anything he wanted to know, Zethkalar said. But he never used physical torture or threats. The council members looked confused. How could talking be more effective than force? Turner understood Zerion psychology better than they understood it themselves, Zethkalar explained. He knew exactly what questions to ask and when to ask them. A captured Zerion warrior would be brought to Turner's tent. Turner would offer the prisoner food and water. He would ask about the warrior's family and homeworld. He would seem genuinely interested in Zerion culture and history. Then, slowly and carefully, Turner would begin asking about military matters, not direct questions about battle plans, but casual conversation about the prisoner's unit and duties. The Zerion prisoners wanted to talk to him, Zethkalar said with amazement. Turner made them feel comfortable and understood. They would tell him secrets without realizing they were doing it. Within hours, Turner would know the locations of hidden bases, the names of Zerion commanders, and the plans for future attacks, all from simple conversation. He could see psychological pressure points that other species could not detect. Zethkalar continued. Turner understood that every mind has weak spots, just like every fortress has weak walls. The combination of all these psychological tactics created something new in galactic warfare. For the first time in history, an enemy began to fear fighting before the battle even started. Zerion forces would receive orders to attack human positions, and some units would refuse to go. Others would advance but retreat at the first sign of resistance. The mere possibility of facing humans became more frightening than actual combat. Humans had weaponized fear itself, Zethkalar told the council. They made their enemies defeat themselves. The most chilling example came during the siege of Dark Moon Station. A Zerion force of 5,000 warriors surrounded 200 human defenders. By all logic, the humans should have surrendered immediately. Instead, the humans began their psychological warfare campaign. They played music. They left evidence of their presence in impossible places. They broadcast fake radio messages that made the Zerion think human reinforcements were coming. After 3 days, the Zerion force retreated without firing a shot. 5,000 warriors fled from 200 humans, Zethkalar said quietly, not because they could not win the battle, but because they were afraid to try. The council chamber was completely silent. Several members looked pale despite their different skin colors. The implications of what they were hearing were staggering. But even this was not the end, Zethkalar continued. The worst part was what happened when the war ended, when we learned what humans could do when they were not fighting for survival, but fighting to win completely. He looked around the room at the faces of the council members. Fear was beginning to show in their eyes. I will tell you about the final campaign, Zethkalar said, about how General Carl Thompson ended the war not with weapons, but with the simple threat of human persistence. Zethkalar moved to the large window that looked out into space. Stars twinkled in the darkness beyond Kepler Station. His reflection in the glass showed an old soldier who had seen too much war. General Carl Thompson ended the greatest conflict in galactic history, he said without turning around. But he did not win through battle. He won by making the enemy understand what humans truly are. The council members waited in tense silence. They could sense that the most important part of the story was coming. Thompson was different from the other human commanders, Zethkalar continued. Morrison was brave, Harper was smart, Kelly was creative, Turner understood minds, but Thompson understood something deeper. Thompson was a tall man with white hair and kind eyes. He looked like someone's grandfather, not a military leader. When he spoke, his voice was soft and calm. He never raised his voice or made threats. This made him the most terrifying human of all. Thompson's final campaign had no major battles, Zethkalar explained. No great space fights or desperate last stands. Instead, he did something that no one expected. He hunted. The Zerion swarm had one weakness that no one knew about. Their entire society was controlled by a small group of leaders called the High Nest. These were the oldest and smartest Zerion, the ones who made all the decisions for billions of warriors. The High Nest lived on the Zerion homeworld, protected by massive armies and energy shields. They had never been in danger during the entire war. They gave orders from safety while their warriors died in battle. Thompson decided to change that. He took a small team of human soldiers and went hunting for the High Nest, Zethkalar said, not to capture them or negotiate with them, to eliminate them completely. The mission should have been impossible. The Xerian homeworld was surrounded by defense fleets. The planet's surface was covered with weapons. Underground bunkers protected the High Nest from any attack. But Thompson did not attack the planet. He went to the planet and waited. For 6 months, no one knew where Thompson was, Zethgalar continued. There were rumors that he had been captured or killed. The Galactic Command assumed his mission had failed. Then High Nest members began to disappear. The first to vanish was Elder Vrextor, the Xerian military planner. He was found dead in his private chambers, killed by a simple knife wound. No alarms had been triggered. No guards had seen anything. Someone had walked into the most secure building on the planet and killed him silently. The second death was Elder Ketnal, the intelligence coordinator. She died in her private transport, poisoned by something in her food. Again, no one saw the killer. No evidence was left behind. One by one, the High Nest members died, Zethgalar told the council. Thompson and his team were like ghosts. They appeared, killed their target, and vanished. The remaining Xerian leaders increased their security. They surrounded themselves with hundreds of guards. They moved to different locations every day. They tested their food for poison and wore armor at all times. It did not matter. The humans found them anyway. Elder Zoxmel died in a room with 30 guards. They found him with his neck broken, and none of the guards remembered seeing anyone enter. Elder Quintar was killed by an explosive device that appeared in his bedchamber, despite the room being searched for bombs every hour. The humans were patient, Zethgalar explained. They waited for the perfect moment to strike. They learned the habits and routines of their targets. They turned the Xerians' own security measures against them. After 3 months, only 2 members of the High Nest remained alive. These 2 leaders sent a message to the Galactic Command. They wanted to negotiate. Thompson's reply was simple: surrender completely or join your colleagues. The humans had demonstrated something that terrified the Xerian more than any weapon, Zethgalar said. They had shown that no one was safe from human determination. If humans decided to kill you, you would die. It was just a matter of time. The 2 surviving High Nest members ordered all Xerion forces to stop fighting and return to their home territories. The war was over not because the Xerion had been defeated in battle, but because they were afraid to continue. Thompson had won by making the enemy understand human persistence, Zethgalar explained. Humans do not give up. They do not get tired. They do not forget. If you make them angry enough, they will chase you to the end of the galaxy. After the war, everything changed in galactic military doctrine. The old ways of fighting seemed outdated and ineffective. Human advisors were requested by every major military force. Colonel Rebecca Hunt became famous for teaching alien soldiers to think like humans. Her training programs emphasized adaptability over rigid planning. She taught that rules were guidelines, not absolute laws. Major Alex Rivera specialized in psychological operations. He showed other species how to understand their enemies' minds and use fear as a weapon. His motto was, "Know your enemy's weaknesses better than they do." But the most important change was in how we thought about war itself, Zethgalar told the council. Before humans, war was about destroying the enemy's ability to fight. Humans taught us that war is about destroying the enemy's will to fight. The galactic military began studying human history. They learned about Earth's long tradition of warfare and the lessons humans had learned over thousands of years. The concepts of total war, psychological operations, and asymmetric tactics became standard training, but some military leaders worried about what they had unleashed. We had invited the most dangerous predators in the galaxy to join our cause, Zethgalar said quietly, and now they were teaching us to be like them. Human military doctrine spread throughout the galaxy. Species that had fought with honor and tradition for millennia began using human tactics. The clean, organized warfare of the past gave way to something more brutal and effective. We had won the war against the Xerion, Zethgalar continued. But in doing so, we had changed the nature of warfare forever. There was no going back to the old ways. The Council voted to establish permanent human leadership positions in the Galactic Alliance military. Humans would help plan future defenses and train alien forces in the new warfare methods. But secretly, the Council also implemented monitoring protocols for human military development. They wanted to make sure that humanity's growing influence could be controlled if necessary. "This was our mistake," Zethkalar said, turning away from the window to face the Council. "We thought we could harness human military genius without consequences. We thought we could learn from them and then limit their power. But humans had already thought of this possibility. Human intelligence officers had detected the monitoring systems within weeks. Instead of protesting, they simply began feeding false information to the monitors while developing their real capabilities in secret. Humans had learned to use our own paranoia against us," Zethkalar explained. "They made us think we were watching them while they prepared for whatever might come next." The alien commander walked back to the center of the chamber, his forearms spread wide as he delivered his final words. "Today, human forces serve in every corner of the galaxy," he said. "They guard our borders, plan our defenses, and train our soldiers. They have become the backbone of galactic security." The council members nodded. This seemed like a good thing. "But I have seen what humans can do when they decide something needs to be changed," Zethkalar continued. "I have watched them revolutionize warfare in just 3 years. I have seen them turn every disadvantage into an advantage." He paused and looked around the room at each council member. "What do you think will happen if humans ever decide that the Galactic Alliance itself is an obstacle to their goals?" he asked quietly. The council chamber fell silent. For the first time, the representatives began to understand the true implications of Zethkalar's testimony. They had gained the most effective military force in galactic history as allies, but they had also created the most dangerous potential enemy they could imagine. "Humans saved our civilization," Zethkalar concluded. "The question we must ask ourselves is this: what will they do with the power we have given them?" The alien commander bowed to the council and walked toward the exit. His testimony was complete. The decision of what to do with his warning was no longer his responsibility. As the chamber doors closed behind him, the council members sat in worried silence. Outside the windows, human patrol ships moved through space, protecting the galaxy with the same ruthless efficiency they had once used to conquer it. The age of human warfare had begun, and no one knew where it would end.